Wes, how you doing, bud?
Doing great. How you doing today, man?
Doing well, enjoying this fall weather, and getting ready for the third Saturday in October, and covering Alabama, we keep up obviously with Tennessee, and sometimes it's almost laughable what you guys have had to cover the last 5 or 6 years there, some of the storylines and things. But how are things now? What's the fans' mood? It looks like it's a pretty, I don't want to say poisonous, but looks like it's a pretty volatile environment right there in Knoxville right now.
Yeah, Aaron, I think that's probably a good way to put it. I laugh all the time that I say this thing has reached peak frustration, only to be convinced otherwise. Within like a couple of days. But it's kind of. I think this might be about as frustrated as it's been because everyone was so convinced, and with good reason, that this kind of nonsense was behind Tennessee. I think that's the frustrating part, is that they went kind of through their, Moses wandering in the desert, phase as a program for a while, kind of like Bama did, about 15 years ago, in Oklahoma before that. You just kind of go through those periods. And I think Tennessee thought that, okay, there's different tiers of the SEC. Basically, everyone's trying to chase Bama. Maybe Georgia's getting closer. Auburn's not bad. But beyond that, it's just kind of a bunch of the same teams, basically. But Tennessee thought it would be near the top of that group, and right now it's at the bottom of that group, or near the bottom of that group. And that's just completely unacceptable for the way this program's been recruiting. It shouldn't be happening. I know they've had injuries, they've had other issues, but this team has no business being 3-3 right now.
Yeah, you look at the talent level, and they've got some really nice players, and it's hard to find out, put your finger on what's going wrong. I wonder, looking at what Butch has done, and I think to some extent his positive attributes get buried because of some of his PR nightmares. If he had never said some of this stuff and hadn't embarrassed the fan base with some of the more ridiculous things that he said, would there be a different narrative right now? Would he have some political capital that he can cash in, or is it just gotten so bad there with the play on the field that there's no coming back?
Well, that's a good question, and I've gone back and forth on that, because what I do know is that it wouldn't be as bad. I know that for sure. But in terms of just how, would it be okay? Would he have political capital? Maybe a little bit. Maybe if they had some bad injuries this year and some other things were happening, maybe they could, kind of talk that one down. But I think the issue is this, and I think this is a very valid issue. The SEC East has never been simpler than it's been the past couple of years. Georgia was kind of in a transition phase. Florida was sort of coming out of a transition phase, but still not dominant. South Carolina was in a transition phase. There was no reason for Tennessee to not win the East at least once, if not both, of the past 2 years, and that didn't happen. So then you combine that with this team starting season 3-3, and all of a sudden you're looking at least a second, maybe a third consecutive season where the team is not as good as the sum of its parts. And when you do that, then it becomes a lot more logical to sit back and say, where is this thing going? So I don't know that it would be talked down. I don't think you could talk people away from the ledge, but I do think you could make it less poisonous if it hadn't been for the fact that, half the time he opens his mouth, he does himself a lot of disservice.
Yeah, and blaming the media. Listen, we're an easy punching bag, but that was embarrassing and kind of stupefying. Talking to Wes Rucker, covers Tennessee for GoVols 247. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but what do we know about John Currie? Obviously, this was not his hire, but him as an athletic director, is anything in his past that suggests that he's a more lenient athletic director? Is there something that suggests he's willing to make a bold change?
I'll put it this way. I know I've known John for since he was at Tennessee, because he was at Tennessee for a decade as an associate AD before he went to Manhattan, Kansas State for, a decade or so as the main guy there, and now he's back at Tennessee as the main guy. So I've known him. He was one of the guys who helped build the Tennessee basketball program back with Bruce Pearl. And I know people who like John, and I know people who don't like John. I happen to like the guy. I know other people, some others don't. But I think the universal sort of take on him is that he can be shrewd when he needs to be. I don't think he would ever hesitate from backing down. I mean, this is a guy who, when he butted heads with Frank Martin, he got his way. When he butted heads with Bill Snyder a couple times, he got his way. So he's not afraid to go in there and say what he thinks is best for a university and do that. The problem here, Aaron, is a simple one. He just got to Tennessee. He just got back to Tennessee. And when you're an AD and you go into your first year somewhere, you absolutely positively do not want to go make a football coaching move then, because you get one chance to get that right. And then if you get it wrong, then you're 10 years in trouble before it even gets off the ground. So I think he wanted to come back, get a better lay of the land, kind of see where things were, get a feel for the program, and then make some decisions on things like that. And I think he was completely blown away at the frustration, after the Florida game. He was blown away by the frustration after the UMass win. He's no longer being blown away by it, but at the time he was surprised, because I don't think he ever thought, things have been just the best thing ever the past couple of years. I mean, the guy has a national title ring from Tennessee on his finger, so he knows what the program should be. But I think the more he's dug into this, the more I think he's realized that this is worse than he thought it was. And now he's in the unenviable position, but the position he's hired to do, which is have to make a tough decision. And I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. I don't see how this thing, gets corrected with this staff here. I don't see a path. It's like when a politician concedes an election, they go, I just don't see a path forward. That's kind of where I'm at with this group. I'm not going to say that it's a done deal, but I just don't know how it gets fixed.
Yeah, and like most SEC programs, there are the power brokers around a school, and now you have the added dimension and dynamic of Phil Fulmer being back around the program and Peyton Manning now retired. If they do, how instrumental will those two guys, being legends of Tennessee football and fan favorites, so to speak? And I think enough time has passed. Coach Fulmer, the way he ended things there, that I think a lot of fans remember the things he did, and now Peyton having some energy to put forth to things. How instrumental do you think they would be in a new search?
I know both of those guys pretty well, and I know that, to me, there is no way that both of them get involved unless, one, they're asked to be involved, and two, they'll be given assurances that their opinion will matter. And I know this, Peyton Manning will be a part of that process. He absolutely will be. They're going to go to Peyton because they'd be the dumbest people in the world not to, and I don't think they're the dumbest people in the world. So they're going to go to Peyton Manning, and I think they're going to go to Phil Fulmer too. And I think the interesting thing there, the fascinating subplot, is that John Currie was one of the people in the athletic department who sort of led the charge on there needing to be a change with the Fulmer regime years ago. And the two men just do not love each other. Let's put it that way. But the one tie that binds those two is that they both love Tennessee more than they've disliked the other guy. So at the end of the day, they get on the same page when they need to. And I think, I think that both of those guys will be involved in the process. I think they'll both be pretty heavily involved. Ultimately, it'll be the decision of John Currie and some power brokers like a Jim Haslam. Those are the guys who ultimately, him, Charlie Anderson, those kind of guys will be the ones who help make the decision. But guys like Manning and Fulmer certainly will be listened to.
Yeah, and it's easy to look at Tennessee right now and say, well, it'll never be like it was in the 90s. But I'll remind people it's one of the maybe 2-3 best towns in the SEC. They've got big money, and they got everything they need to win there. So it's hard to envision Tennessee staying down for much longer now that they've got financial situation turned around. They've got talent level turned around. Wes, I know, wrapping up here, if you want to follow Wes, I recommend you do so. It's Wes Rucker 247. I know you're a big basketball fan like I am. When's the last time you were as optimistic for an SEC basketball season as this season seems to be, with what really looks like a pretty competitive, solid conference top to bottom?
Yeah, you're right, Aaron. I'm one of those weird guys that grew up kind of loving SEC basketball more than SEC football. I think there's a club for us sickos. But I've thought this before. and been wrong about it. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse on it. But when you've got a team like Tennessee being ranked 13th in the preseason, I think you're a pretty good league. And you know, I think you could. The fascinating thing to me is you could look anywhere from like that anywhere in that 3 to 5 range preseason to like all the way down to 12 and 13. Either of the, I mean, that could go any way with either of those teams. I think it's that competitive in the league, and I love the fact that a couple of years ago the SEC had a powwow and it said a couple of things. One, this league needs better coaching, and two, it needs a better out-of-conference schedule. And Sankey and those guys, they got together, they made a plan, and they've gone by that plan. And you've seen coaching upgrades throughout the league. You've seen recruiting upgrades throughout the league. You've seen better commitment to facilities in some cases. I think that this will always be a football-first conference, but the people who sit there and say it's only football and, you know, softball and baseball and all, no, this can be a basketball league. It can be. There are a lot of great fan bases in this league. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The Tennessee basketball fan base is much bigger and passionate than just about anyone seems to think that it is. And it's not the only one in the league that's got a really good fan base. So I think that with the coaching and with the facilities and with the way that they've brought in some more of that kind of 5-star talent, not just all of it going to Kentucky, I think people have reason to be excited about this season. I think there could be a lot of tournament teams in that league this year. I really do.
Yeah, and what seems to be plaguing the SEC in football, questionable hires. They've absolutely gotten right on the basketball side. Wes Rucker.
I mean, look at what Avery's doing down there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the talent he's brought in this year. Now we'll see if everything shakes out with some of that stuff with the FBI. I know Avery really didn't want to talk about that yesterday, and I don't blame him. But, I mean, just look at the talent he's brought in. That roster is completely different from what it was 2 years ago. And that's not the only one in the league. You know, Tennessee got the number 1 ranked player out of France this year, who's just an unbelievable athlete, dunked from the free throw line the other day in their tip-off sort of party opener thing. So there's talent in this league, and I think it's fun to see where this thing's going because some of us really like watching